Welcome back, everybody. It's time to meet our community, the Hispanic business community here in Orange County, powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And today, hosted by the one man who certainly knows all the politicians and all the players in town here. He's going to prove that again. Ruben Franco. Welcome, sir. Who'd you bring?
Hey, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And thanks for everybody listening today. We've got a special guest. We have a candidate for lieutenant governor. He's a former mayor of Stockton, and he's a special advisor right now currently to Governor Gavin Newsom. He's been here in Orange County before as a friend at one of our events we had for our Supervisor Sarmiento, and we appreciate him joining us to tell him a little bit about himself. And we'd like to start off the podcast just you telling us a little bit about yourself personally.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love being in Orange County. Michael Tubbs, former mayor of Stockton, California. Grew up in Stockton, California. My mom was a teenager when she had me, and my father is still incarcerated. So everything I've accomplished has always been against the odds, if you will. I was lucky to grow up in a very strong family unit, despite some of the challenges. My mom, my aunt, and grandmother kept me in church and also kept me really focused on not our neighborhood, but on possibilities. They taught me things like no one was better than me, and I was also better than no one. They taught me that if I didn't like something, I had to fight for it because the cavalry wasn't coming to save me, that no one was going to fix it for me. And they told me I could be anything I wanted to be. And I believed them. I took that as Bible. And thanks to their love and encouragement, I was able to be the first one in my family to go to college. I went to Stanford, spent 4 years there, and then ran for city council in Stockton in 2012. I was 21 years old. The city had just declared bankruptcy. I spent 4 years representing my own neighborhood on the city council. Then ran for mayor and was elected the same day Donald Trump was elected the first time. So I was 26 years old. I was the youngest mayor ever of a city in this country of more than 100,000 people, and spent my time as a mayor doing things like basic income, scholarships for all our kids, standing up against ICE the first time, reducing homicides, improving relationship between police and community while also hiring more cops, supporting our small business community and bringing in more investors, brought in Kiva to do micro lending, brought in Main Street to do some business development, and now taking all those experiences to run statewide as lieutenant governor.
That's amazing. What made you 21 years old? What made you want to run for office at 21 years old?
Yeah, there's something to be said about youthful idealism. My cousin, I was interning in the White House the year before.
Okay.
But my job, I ranked it last. So you could rank all the departments. I ranked the last department, intergovernmental affairs. Because I was like, I have worked with local officials in Stockton. I was like, that's not going to be fun. I don't want to do that. And of course, that's the one I got. So I spent 12 hours a day researching mayors and council members. And while there, one of my cousins was a victim of a homicide in Stockton. So it was really that anger, that pain, that sadness that sort of got me thinking about, okay, what's all this for? I'm at Stanford. I'm in the White House, but my family's like literally back home dying. Like, how am I helping? And then that same year, afterwards, the city had declared bankruptcy, the largest city at the time in the country to ever declare bankruptcy. And then the then mayor, I will never forget this, I was home for winter break, and she had announced 6 months prior that she had this huge, comprehensive anti-violence strategy that she was going to roll out called the Marshall Plan on Crime. And then 6 months later, the reporter asked her, like, what's up with the Marshall Plan? Where is it? And she forgot. She was literally like a deer caught in headlights. Like, she just couldn't even lie. Nothing had been done. I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's not, I was angry. I was like, this is not personal. This is just something that's on the to-do list. This is not existential. And that's when I decided to run for city council. But I never worked on the campaign before, so I had no idea how much work it was going to be. I had no idea how difficult it was. And I was still a senior in college, so I was then commuting back and forth between home and Stanford. And like, I remember one day I campaigned all day, rushed home, borrowed a tie from my best friend to go to the senior formal. And I didn't even have money because I had stopped working my student jobs to campaign. Sure. So I had to sneak in the senior formal. So I snuck in the back and things like that.
That's amazing. What did you learn being mayor of Stockton, being a council, being mayor? What leadership did that bring to the table to you today to be running for lieutenant governor?
Again, I think people forget. So the years 2016 to 2020, it wasn't just Trump's first term. I was also the mayor during COVID. I had to lead during COVID. Right. I was also the mayor during the Black Lives Matter protest, so I had to lead that, while also being in charge of the police department. So having to balance the righteous anger of the protesters with the police reforms we were already making, and our officers feeling like, do people not see that we're trying to change and we're trying to get better? And my council was 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. So it was like not in a place where everyone believed the same way or everyone had the same view on how, or everyone even voted for the same president. So the 3 things I learned was, number 1, that government, the status quo, it's hard to make the delta between a small change and a big change is the same in terms of the energy required. To get the government bureaucracy to move, it's going to take the same amount of energy to do a small incremental change as it will to do something bigger. So you might as well at least start with where you want to go. And you might not get there all the way, but that's the only way to, you have to push it because it wants to stay at motion. It does not want to change, even if it's not working. The second thing I learned was the importance of relationships. That almost the only time, I only got outvoted once as a mayor, and every time I always get 6-1 votes, 7-0 votes, 6-1 votes, with the one dissenting vote being a Democrat. And I learned that for my colleagues, part of it was just built in the relationship I had with them. That even if they didn't understand all the way, or even if they had some questions or some reservations about what we're trying to do, they knew that they could answer, they knew they could ask questions, right? Yeah. They knew they could voice their dissent. They knew we would incorporate their views, some of the questions they had, or some of the framing they had to assuage some of their concerns, and that they trusted me. So they would be like, let's go, let's do it. So just the importance of relationships. And like I learned in my community organizing days, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent issues, and just building your coalition to work. And then related to that, I learned that change moves at the speed of trust, that you have to build trust and credibility to make things happen. And then lastly, like, government's not perfect and government can't do everything, but you can actually do things. You can actually make a change. You can actually make a difference. And part of that is realizing that with leadership, when you say something, when you say an idea, when you have a question, there's a reaction. Like, folks have to respond. And just knowing the power that comes with that, and be very deliberate about when to push and how to push and when to bring things up. And that was just, I was like, wow, like I don't have a magic wand, but there are things we can do to make things better.
Yeah, that's a incredible journey, just being so young and being so focused on those type of things and learning how to work both sides of the aisle. You have a split council, but that's where politics is, right? The local politics makes a difference, the impact that you have. You went to Stanford. My sister went to Stanford. My other sister went to UOP in Stockton.
Oh, wow. Great family.
Played volleyball there at Stockton. I went to UCLA. And if you become lieutenant governor, I know you would sit on a bunch of commissions. You'd T system, Cal State system, community colleges. What is that going to be? What is your kind of focus when it comes to K through 12, higher education? Yeah. What do you think you're going to be doing as lieutenant governor when it comes to education?
Yeah, I think overall, as lieutenant governor, I'm going to get on some people's nerves because things have to change and we have to do something. We can't just talk. Right. In terms of higher education, as you mentioned, the lieutenant governor sits on the UC, CSU, community college boards. So in those positions, those are big education institutions. So of course, we have to defend against the Trump administration's attacks on education. We have to allow for academic integrity and freedom. But we also have to make sure there are real pathways for folks to graduate with jobs, and graduate and not be in debt, and graduate and learn the life of mine, but also learn about entrepreneurship, learn about how to start their own small businesses, or learn about how to participate in this fourth largest economy, and also make it pathways easier. So expanding nursing programs, expanding teaching education programs, expanding the programs for the jobs we know won't be automated, the jobs that will exist. But then those are also huge employers and huge landowners. So we have to do more to leverage those systems to build housing. We know that housing and affordability are the 2 biggest issues in California right now. And 1 out of every 8 student in our higher education system is housing insecure. I've been down to the state meeting with folks who are like UC Irvine students who are commuting 2 hours to go to this class because they can't afford housing near their campus, from workers at the same university doing the same, and that's unacceptable. So really building more housing will be the top of mind for me. In terms of the K through 12 system, was the UC, community college, and CSU systems provide a unique perch to see which ways in which our K-12 system may be falling short. So looking at sort of remedial classes, looking at where preparation falls short, and taking that data not to demonize the amazing work that educators are doing in our K-12 system, but saying, hey, we need to focus here. Hey, how can we be a partner in establishing more partnerships, particularly when it comes to like math and algebra, right, which we know is an assembly block for folks. Like, how do we leverage the UC CSU community college system to provide those remedial classes before young people are in freshmen and having to spend 6 years to graduate? Like, how do we start in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th, 11th grade with summer partnerships and programs for folks on that pathway? I think is a huge first step. And then as Lieutenant Governor, given those systems, particularly the community college system, how many of those folks are parents? It's leading the charge for not just K through 12, but the education system from 2 to 4. And as we think about childcare and increasing childcare access and making childcare universally affordable for folks in California. And even if we can't start with everyone, let's start with the community college students, particularly because we have facilities on those campuses, particularly because we have a captive audience. And how do we model what affordable childcare could look like for every Californian in our university system? So that's how I'm thinking about the role now. And of course, given the times we're in, I'm sure other issues will come up. And lastly, and it's funny because as you mentioned, I went to Stanford, but I don't think Stanford has the monopoly on like good ideas and startup founders and entrepreneurs. Right. I think there's so much brilliance, not just in our UC systems. Like, we know Berkeley and UCLA students and UC San Diego, Irvine students are brilliant, but so are students at CSU Stanislaus and Long Beach State, right, and Cal State LA. And how do we really infuse that innovation ecosystem into those campuses as well? Because I think, particularly students from first generation, from non-traditional backgrounds, students with immigrants' parents, they have a unique experience, worldview, insights, and proximity to problems that someone who went to boarding school and then Stanford may not have in terms of what a product could be to solve the need. So I'm really excited about spreading that sort of ethos of entrepreneurship and innovation to all of our campuses, to our community college system as well, because I just know there's so much brilliance and so many $1 billion ideas there, as well as at the UCLA, the UC Berkeleys, and the Stanfords.
Yeah, that's great. If you're just joining us right now, we have Michael Tubbs, a Lieutenant Governor candidate, former Mayor of Stockton, and he's a Special Advisor to Governor Gavin Newsom. Tell us a little bit about your role right now with the governor.
Yeah, so after my term in Stockton was over, the governor called and said, look, don't go to D.C. We need you here in California. And I still accepted the job in the Biden administration, but then my wife and I were expecting our second child shortly thereafter. And we were like 2 kids under 2 in D.C. with no family, no money in a White House job. No, that's not going to work. I sat with the governor. We talked about our shared interests around poverty abolition in the state and figuring out how to make the economy that works well for some people work better for everyone. And I was like, let me just advise you and give you proposals for economic policies, but focus on the bottom and lifting the floor. So the past 3 years, some of the work we've done is I was able to lobby for $2 billion in childhood savings accounts through the Cal Savers program that he signed a couple years ago into law. I was able to work in coalition with groups like End Child Poverty Now and then Senator Nancy Skinner to pass a HOPE account. So now that every child in California who lost a parent to COVID or is a foster youth is guaranteed $2,000 in a savings account. Like the Trump accounts that Trump talked about, we were doing that in California first through our HOPE accounts. So that young folks, particularly in those circumstances, are able to graduate with a nest egg and be able to actually put a down payment on, have some money for a car or apartment or education, etc. We created the California Youth Workforce Development Program, which is a summer jobs program that all the cities, particularly the big 13 cities in the state, have, where Cal Volunteers is able to administer a summer workforce program. That was from a proposal I wrote to the governor saying that, hey, look, as a mayor, all mayors love summer youth jobs. It's a political winner because everybody you talk to remembers their summer youth job, and what if we provide the opportunity for this generation of young people? And so that's been some of the big wins in the work. And then a lot of it has also been figuring out how do we, and going up and down the state, meeting with community members and stuff that's happening at the local level to figure out this housing affordability issue, to figure out how do we ensure access to capital to folks? How do we support CDFIs? How do we make sure that, again, that folks are able to participate in the California economy, and that the innovation isn't just concentrated in a couple places with a couple people from a couple backgrounds, but that everyone at least has access to the opportunity. And we definitely have a lot more work to do, which is why I'm running for lieutenant governor. But I'm happy with some of the achievements we've made.
That's great. You mentioned CDFIs. We're here in an entrepreneur center. The chamber is very involved in access to capital, helping people start a business, grow a business, fund a business. Expand some kind of the things that you're looking at as far as how do we get more capital to our small businesses? What can the state do in that regard? Yeah,
I'm going to get in trouble because we haven't fully fleshed this out yet, but I know as lieutenant governor, I will be advocating for a state public bank.
Okay.
And what I'm excited about that idea, and they have one in I think North Dakota or South Dakota, is that it's another avenue by which folks are going to be able to access capital, but because it's a state-owned bank, it'll be able to operate like a bank, but more in the public interest. Lower interest loans, even grants in some cases. And I think just given it's the state of California bank, more people will find it approachable and be able to access it. So I think that would be a huge sort of win and driver if there's a state bank that's able to provide low interest loans for folks, or low interest or no interest loans for folks to get their educations, to start their businesses, and to couple that with partnering with local CDFIs to do the training, the upskilling, the development, the business plan development. It is important. Number two, it's particularly the UC-CSU community college system. They spend billions of dollars every year. So one of the things I learned from being mayor of Stockton is that the power of local government is in procurement. It's in who gets these contracts. Right. It's like I recognize so many people in Stockton that were wealthy off government contracts. They figured out procurement. They got the bid. They're in the system. And that oftentimes that those who won the contracts did not look like the city that was paying for the contract. Taxpayers are paying for the contract. So spend a lot of time thinking through how do we diversify our supplier chain? How do we make sure our procurement process is one by which everyone has a shot? Right. Not guaranteeing outcomes, but let's not close the loop. Let's make it so that everyone knows how to apply. So I think one of the things I want to do as lieutenant governor is work with our UC-CSU community college system and our procurement policies and making sure that we just don't have a policy, but we're partnering with folks or doing it ourselves to get people ready to be the suppliers of paper, of janitorial services, of catering. There's so much money that's spent, and that money should be circling in our communities, and folks should be able to eat off of, build businesses off what their tax dollars support. So I think those two things would be huge wins for the state and help with the affordability issue. And let me backtrack, because I in the past couple of years, particularly doing work around guaranteed income, I've recognized that everyone wants a shot at not just income, but wealth. Like, people want to have money. People want to be able to own a house. People want to be able to pass something on to their children. People want to be able to go on vacation. And I think a big part of that is absolutely having a floor, but the floor can't be the max. Like, the floor can't be it for everyone. Like, folks want to have a floor to stand upon, and then they want to be able to have a chance to build something more if they want to. Right. And I think the state bank and the procurement policies will do just that.
And so procurement also means DGS, which is the Department of General Services that the state runs, and the opportunity to work with those contracts as well, even federal contracts. Which
big money.
Right. Yeah, big money.
Doing stuff that our communities do. And that's the thing. It's not like, for the most part, a lot of things they're procuring are things that communities, all communities, but particularly communities of colors, in this case, Huntington Hispanic Chamber, Hispanic communities already do.
Right.
It's not like you have to do something else. It's just figuring out how to get the insurance, figuring out how to make sure all the paperwork's on, figuring out how do you sign up make sure you're on the webinar, make sure you're in the mix. And once people figure out procurement, they're like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I could do this.
And that's something that we help too, right?
Yeah.
Because you and I can maybe go get a contract tomorrow for $1 million, but how do we facilitate that? We have a line of credit for it to do it? Maybe not. So it's access to capital, which helps you fulfill that contract that you get. So those are all great things that we work on, and I know you.
Oh yeah, I
as well.
I didn't mention. I should have mentioned my opening, but one of my biggest partners in Stockton was the San Joaquin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, okay.
We did so much work to get like a Stockton. My city council district was 70% Latino, and the city's like 35 to 40%. So much of the economy, so much of our economic development was the Latino community, not because they were a minority community, because they're the majority. That was most of our community. So spent and I learned a lot of the CDFI stuff, a lot of the small business incubation development stuff from working with them and identify, okay, well, one of the things we did I'm proud of is, and it's still there in downtown Stockton, we had so many food entrepreneurs who, because we didn't have a real system for them, who one was like almost got in trouble with the DA for selling pozole or something. It was ridiculous. Anyway, I read that. I said, no, what? This is ridiculous. So we created a whole mercado for folks where like food entrepreneurs were put in a 8-week program to learn how to make their home catering business a business. We created like a ghost kitchen situation. Had a lot of momentum. Then COVID happened, but I went back to Stockton recently and it was still happening. That's like, oh my gosh. So stuff like that is incredibly important.
Yeah, and we do a lot of that work here too, so it's good to see that you were doing that up in Stockton. I know you mentioned foster youth. I know we've talked about a lot homelessness and all that kind of stuff, and there's foster youth who age out, there's veterans, there's people who have mental illness, sometimes there's people who have drug addictions. Affordability obviously is part of that equation. What do you think we can do a better job with regarding homeless?
We could do a better job of preventing it. Because once someone is actually homeless, it's much more difficult to get them housed and costly than preventing folks to be homeless in the first place. We know in California that the average cost of eviction is less than $400. And that there's all types of warning symbols and indicators from credit scores and credit history. There's ways you can predict which folks, and in fact in LA, I'm on the Mayor's Fund board, and one of our programs, We Are LA, is doing that work and finding sort of zip codes and folks who are at risk for eviction, letting them know of all the help they can get this month so that they're not evicted. And so that we know that sort of having a lawyer when you go through eviction proceedings is also helpful for folks. So right to counsel, that's an important piece. And then we also know that we have to build more housing. we know that part of the reason why housing is unaffordable and people can't afford rent is because supply is constricted. And we have to just build more housing in California of all types, affordable, deeply affordable, market rate, and above. Like, we need more housing in California, period. And then to your point, and I appreciate that because I don't think people really get that homelessness is such a broad nomenclature, but underneath that, you have to disaggregate it. There's different solutions for different groups. So that with foster youth, 50% of all folks who are homeless, I read, were once foster children. That's our fault because those are our kids. We took them from their home unit and we said that we're going to take care of them as a society. So we have, and one of the things I've been working on with Senator Cortese is how do we do a basic income for foster youth as they age out? So once they age out, they're not just put on the streets, but they're giving a floor with which they can afford housing so they don't get into homelessness. We know with veterans, so many of them have dollars already attached to them due to their service. So how do we make sure that we're very smart about drawing down all those resources for every homeless veteran? When I was mayor, I spent a lot of time with landlords to say, look, I want you to take everyone, but if you can't take everyone, let's start with homeless veterans. Let's start with VASH vouchers. Could we just prioritize the VASH? Take the VASH. You might not want to take Section 8, which is a problem, but can you take the VASH vouchers at least? Let's start there. So I think stuff like that. And then I think when we do that, when we house people who are easy to house because they don't have, because the issue is just literally money, or veterans who have money attached to them, then we could deal with some of the abnormal dysfunctional behaviors folks see from folks who are chemical and substance dependent and folks who have mental illnesses. And that's a much more complex solution requiring intensive outreach, intensive support, housing for like service delivery, housing. That takes a lot. But I think part of the issue with homelessness is that folks want to start there and focus there. But you should never focus on the hardest part of the problem. If we house everyone who's just homeless because they can't afford housing, if we house every homeless veteran who has money attached to them, if we house and make sure every foster youth aging out have what they need, then the number of folks on our streets who have a substance use disorder or are mentally ill, that becomes more manageable and more solvable. It doesn't. But right now we're trying to boil the whole ocean and create one solution for everything, and that's just from experience, it's not going to work. It takes precision.
No, I agree, because I serve on the board of the LA Mission
Oh,
at Skid Row, and I still attached to LA because that's where I grew up originally. Yeah, so I know. Yeah, it's just not a one-size-fits-all solution.
And then the last thing I'll say on this is that I also am of the mind that not for everyone, but at least some of the folks who have a substance use disorder or are mentally ill, that may have been caused by homelessness and may not be the cause of the homelessness. That if we keep people sometimes living out in the elements with all that chaos and dysfunction and violence, it's enough to trigger a response in anyone and create a chemical use disorder because you have to take drugs to go to sleep, so you're not cold at night, or so you just go to sleep so you can wake up in the morning, or because you're stressed and anxious and it triggers something in your brain where you have onset of mental illness. So I think if we do the other things, we'll have even less people that have those very serious issues that have to be addressed. But to paint a broad brush and say that's everyone, A, is false, and B, makes a solution impossible. Because it's hard you can't do that for 1 million people. That's right. But for 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people, you can actually focus and get some stuff done.
That's right. You serve on, if you become lieutenant governor, you serve on some other commissions, like land commissions. Yeah. What are some of those commissions?
You serve on the State Lands Commission, one of 3 people. So when offshore drilling permits expire, when you think of opening state lands for renewable energy, the State Lands Commission decides that. Every other year, you're on the Coastal Commission. So we think of our coastlines, you think about the rebuilding from the terrible fires that happened in Los Angeles. The Coastal Commission will be the folks that help decide what happens there. You sit on, there's a Economic Development Commission that you chair. It doesn't have a quorum, so basically the governor appoints a quorum, but there's no quorum. It doesn't meet, and no governor in the last 20 years at least has appointed a quorum for that committee. But I think there's a lot you could do with the position. As I mentioned, I tell people all the time, I as lieutenant governor, I know I'm going to be focused on small businesses and small tech. Yeah, because I think that's where job growth happens. That's where wealth creation happens. That seems to be the unsexy stuff that no one wants to talk. Everyone wants to talk about Amazon and Google and chains. But what about like the folks who are employing 10 to 30 people or 30 to 50 people? Like, how do we make sure they have what they need from the state? That the state's being inclusive of their concerns, and for the small tech companies who are startups and aren't Google yet, but could be, or maybe not. But how do we make sure they have some support and love? So even if that commission doesn't meet, I'm going to have my own quasi commission focused particularly on those 2 things.
That's right, because 95% of our businesses are small businesses. That's just it's not all the big businesses and stuff. Anything else you'd like to share with us? Do you have a website you'd like to share with us as well? If you go to michaeltubbsforca.com, that's my website. You can follow me on Instagram or X or TikTok at Michael D. Tubbs, MichaelDTubbs. And I think the last thing I'll say is that for California, I think there's a temptation to just talk about Donald Trump. And as I've been saying up and down the state, that's necessary but not sufficient. Because even if Trump had lost and Kamala Harris had won, California would still have issues. We'd still lead the nation in poverty. We still would be unaffordable. We still would have issues of governance. So we can't make our whole identity just being anti-Trump. And that's why I'm running. Let's talk about the ways in which MAGA is bad for sure, but let's also focus on how do we build what are we for? And how do we build a California that works for everyone, where everyone has a chance to prosper, thrive, where everyone feels safe. And I think that's what's important now. Of course, everyone who's running for office in California statewide and has a chance is going to be like, Trump is bad. Like, that's not terribly inspiring. But okay, what are we going to do to make California better, or to illustrate that California is better for folks, and folks can afford to live here? And that's why I'm running. That's great. We appreciate it. Our guest has been Michael Tubbs, Lieutenant Governor candidate, former Mayor of Stockton. We appreciate his leadership. And Michael, thanks for being on today. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me and the work you all do. Yeah, thank you.
There you had it. If that's not an impressive reason to tune in, I don't know what is. As we continue to take a look at the people looking to guide our state here in our community podcast, brought to you by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Orange County's only community radio station. OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.